welcome back to another episode of Creatress of Freedom. Hello, hello, beautiful babes. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy and I'm so excited to be dropping in with you again today on this beautiful, powerful episode that I want to share with you. If you are new here, hello, welcome. I'm so happy that you're here. If you're an OG, I love you. Thanks for coming back. I'm Annie. I am your host, also former host of the According to Annie. So maybe you were listening to some previous episodes and you haven't been here for the transition. But I'm super excited to be dropping in with you today and having this conversation because I think that every woman, especially every woman in business, needs to know this. So if you're watching on YouTube, hi, hello, how are you? I'm so happy you're here. And if you're listening to the audio, I'm happy you're here as well. So this topic of syncing your flow with your business, so your cycle with your business. Now, I want to get into a little bit of the educational side of things. And then I have also actually pulled up a framework that is inside one of my containers. And I want to go through it with you just to show you the power in when you know this information, right? And so first of all, this is not something new, right? This is not a new topic. The menstrual cycle of a woman is not a new topic. This is actually ancient wisdom, right? We as women have been experiencing this for more than 3,000 years, and it has been a topic that I feel like really only more so in the last few years has been a topic that people are actually willing to talk about, and it's not shame. There's not shame around it. It's not publicly shamed. And you know, the when it comes to this topic, I don't know if you've read a book called The Red Tent, but I highly recommend that you read that book called The Red Tent. And it talks about how things were done back in ancient times, right? I mean, how you know yourself, how many times are you in the salon or with your work friends and everyone ends up syncing the same, right? Everyone's on the same cycle. God forbid the men that are around at that time. But this is what happens, right? Women tend to sync up with each other. And so back in ancient times, they actually had what was called the red tent. And these women would all go because most of them synced, right? So they would all go and they would all spend the time together nurturing and supporting and loving and cooking the younger generation that were, you know, on their bleed, but also the wise women as well that were also on their bleed, and everyone would support. And it was a time to go inward, and it was a time to not be out doing all the stuff, right? It was seen as such a sacred time of being present and allowing your body to do its bleed that it is going through. But as time went on, Christianity changed those teachings, right? And they disregarded the potency of our feminine cycle. Another great book, if you're interested in you want to know more about this topic, is the Mary Magdalene Revealed book. It's fascinating. You know, I actually grew up in a religious household, and to hear the different teachings from what I had been taught, it's very different to what I was taught about Mary Magdalene. And you know, I think when you are open to this and you are allowing yourself to take in different information, and you know, you get to question and feel how it feels for you, I think is really powerful, because we can just follow on with what we've been told, but like, how does that actually feel for you? And there was a lot of the teachings that were taught to me growing up in my religious household that I didn't feel felt right for me, hence obviously why I'm no longer a part of the religion. But it really gave me an opportunity to question things and to find the information that felt the best for me in my body, right? And so why did the teachings change? Well, the teachings changed because A woman that knows herself is a fucking powerful woman, right? And if we look at it from a patriarchal point of view, the men didn't want women to know that they were powerful. You know, they wanted women to turn on each other. They didn't want them to come together because they truly knew how powerful we are when we are in community, when we are working together. And so that's where, you know, witches were burned at the stake, and, you know, witches were being asked to like dob on other women and getting other women killed. And, you know, we all turned against each other rather than actually supporting, because it was the survival, right? It was who got to survive through those times. So they didn't want us to know our power. And this is why I'm really passionate about making sure that women understand how powerful they really are, because you create life. You literally create life. You have a portal between your legs that creates life. Like, that is mind blowing. Like, can we just take a moment to think about that? Like, you literally create arms and legs, fingers, noses, mouth inside your stomach, like inside your body. That is just mind blowing, right? So that happens because of our menstrual cycles, yeah? So what happens is, because we lost this connection to ourself, we also ignored our deepest desires and our deepest needs. We then, as a result, always also go and spend money on courses and books trying to figure out who the fuck are we. Like, so many women that come into my space are lost, in the sense of, like, they don't know what makes them happy. They don't know what they're here for in this lifetime. They don't know what they're supposed to do. They're constantly seeking answers all the time. They think it's one thing, and then they get that thing, and then they're like, oh, actually, no, like, that didn't give me the thing that I thought, right? And then as a result, we're also self-numbing. So we're TVing, social media, pornography, all of those things that are creating us from from connecting back into our own body, is another result of why this is happening. We also apologize for our emotions, because we've been tarnished that a woman that's angry is psychotic and is just like loose and lost her mind, because God forbid that she actually expresses her emotions and she shares how she's genuinely feeling, or she gets emotional, or she gets upset. Like, I know, even growing up as a child, you know, like, sharing your emotions was not really something that was welcomed. It was, I don't know how many times I heard the saying, you know, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. And then as you get into relationships, you know, being vulnerable and showing your emotions in your relationships, depending on how that person has been brought up in dealing with emotions, that also makes that person feel very uncomfortable too. And I know that that was a huge part of a lot of my relationships, is that I didn't know how to express my emotions because I had never been taught how to express my emotions. So that's another result of us disconnecting from this power that we have within ourselves. Something else that comes, which is even bigger concern, is diseases within the body. So have you noticed all of a sudden, like, it seems like it's a trending thing, right? Like fibromyalgia, fertility issues, PCOS, endo, stress, anxiety, like, you name it. How often, I think we could all, as women, we could all say we know at least one person that has at least one of those things, right? It's because we're so disconnected from our bodies, right? We're so disconnected. And the more that we keep trying to look outside of ourselves and try and get all these answers, the less connected we're going to be. So we have to learn to come back deep within ourselves. So the other thing that has happened as well from this perspective is that another reason why we're the way that we are is because this current world right now, is not designed for women. It is designed to follow a masculine structure of a 7-day week without considering how a woman feels in her 30 days, and how she could actually best operate, right? It's designed for men. And this is how women in the corporate world end up having bigger issues later on in life, health issues, because they have been working against the way that their body actually needs to be operating and working, right? So I wanted to give you a little bit of like understanding as to why this is happening and how we got here and what the results are, right? And they are the results of what's happening. And the reason that I want to share this with you is because I recently was going through one of my clients' financial report. So every month, my clients in the leaders container, they submit their financials and I give them feedback on it. And as I was going through, I noticed this pattern that kept showing up literally every 3 weeks. And because I'm so familiar with this work now and I work my own schedule to my own cycle, I picked up this pattern and I realized that not only were her sales decreasing, her rebooking rate was decreasing, which also meant that that was impacting future bookings. And her content creation was dipping. So, three major things that are needed in order to obviously run a business, right? Without sales, you don't have an income coming in. And so, as I was going through this particular month, I was like, I feel like this is a pattern. So I kept going back through the few months, and literally every third week was a huge dip, massive dip in financials, in rebooking rate, in content creation. And when I picked this up, I said to her, I gave feedback and I said, I'm really curious to know where you are in your cycle on this week, this week, this week, this week, and this week. So when you come into my space, I have a entire section that is dedicated. We actually call it Code Red, and it is dedicated to knowing your cycle, right? I go through the ancient history. I go through why we're disconnected, how we got to where we're at, why we got to where we're at, and then I break down the phases of the cycle, of the 30-day cycle, and I explain to you at what stage you should be doing different tasks based on where you're at in your flow. Because what I see happen is women would set all their team meetings on the week of their flow, like literally on the week of their bleed. And then we get to that week and they're like, oh my God, like I've got to do all my team meetings, my individual meetings, and I just don't have the capacity this week. Like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, where are you in your cycle? And they're like, oh, I'm bleeding. And I'm like, what? Why did you book your meetings in that? Like, that's the worst time that you could do it. Like, not only from like bleeding, but like actually there's scientific evidence that like our brain does not function properly as it would in other seasons of other phases of our cycle. And so like you've just set yourself up for failure to begin with, right? And so knowing this data and really understanding and tracking it, and like I said, inside Evolve I have all of these frameworks where you can start to track your cycles, then you can start to sync it with your business so that you can be the most productive. So coming back to my client, so I said to her, where are you at? And she said, yeah, it's actually my bleed week. And I was like, that makes so much sense. And she's like, yeah, because I can't be fucked, Annie. Like, I'm so exhausted. I can't be fucked. Like, I am literally dragging myself to work. And I said to her, I mean, it makes sense. Like, you're actually technically not really supposed to be doing anything too productive that week. So, this is where now that we know this data, we actually get to set up your weeks, knowing that that third week is your bleed, and making sure that you don't have as much on your calendar so that you don't set yourself up for failure. And you use the other weeks like ovulation or your follicle phase, right, to actually get more stuff done. So this is such powerful work. And I feel like every woman in business needs to know this type of information. Because when you understand, okay, well, at this part, at ovulation, let's say the follicle phase, right? There's two phases. So there's follicle phase, which is broken down into another two. So you have your menstruation and then you have your pre-ovulation or your follicle phase. So this is actually your masculine phase, right? And so this is where you'll actually probably find that maybe you'll have bigger energy. You might have your creativity might be a little bit more amped up. You might be able to think a little bit straighter. You might be a little bit more focused. You might be a little bit more productive, right? So there's the feminine and then there's a masculine part within these phases. And at each phase, there should be different tasks that you should be doing through your business. So for some women, and this is why it also doesn't, it's not a one shoe that fits all, which is why I encourage my women to track their own cycles, because some women will get to their bleed and they will just be like, I can't do anything, I'm dead. Right. But then other women will be like, no, I actually feel really motivated and I feel like that's a really good time for me. So for me, I know the week before my cycle, I will usually experience severe hunger. I'm so hungry. I cannot get full. But I also have learned in the past, after working with a burnout specialist, I used to get severe migraines the week before my period, right? And I didn't know this because I wasn't tracking anything, but usually every once a month I would end up in bed with a killer migraine where blinds had to be closed. I couldn't pick the kids up. Like I was so bad. And I didn't realize that it was based on my cycle because I had never been taught any of that stuff, right? Nobody taught me about my bleed. No one taught me, like, to be honest with you, I didn't even know that there was different parts of how we're impacted until I probably turned, I would say after like 30. Yeah, I would say after 30. And once I learned all of this, I was like, no wonder I hit burnout because I've been going against my body for so long. No wonder I was exhausted all of the time because I was pushing my body every single day. I just kept going, regardless of whether I had my period or not. It was like, oh, just hear it. You suck it up and you just get it done, right? Like that was the mentality that we were taught. And so now I have a very different mentality around it. My bleed is such a sacred time that I have a lot of epic downloads that come through in my bleed. It's actually one of my most creative parts of my cycle. And so creating that time and space on my calendar to sit at my altar, to sit at the couch, to stay in bed a little bit longer with my journal, I have some incredible downloads that end up becoming epic pieces of content, right? And that's because I've learned about my cycle and how I show up. I remember I used to get so frustrated the week of my cycle, the week of my bleed. I didn't sleep very well. I kind of got a little bit of insomnia, and I did research and Googled it, and did all of the stuff around it. And that can apparently be something that is very common for women, is they get a little bit of insomnia. So I used to get so frustrated at myself about tossing and turning in bed, whereas now I have a candle in my room all the time, and I have a journal beside my bed. And those times where I'm struggling to like actually get to sleep, if I actually lean into that and stop resisting it and grab my journal, I can write some epic shit. Like sometimes it's truly, I feel it's channeled some of it, because I'm like, wow, this is impressive. Where did this even come from? I didn't even know that I wrote like that. I didn't even know that I spoke like that. This is amazing. And it's because you're at such a, like you're in a portal, right? You're literally in a portal at that time. So it's really, really important, I think, for every woman to learn and understand the different phases, and at each of those four parts, or the four parts of your cycle throughout that 30 days, 28 to 30 days, at knowing at each one different tasks that you could be doing how you could set your calendar up, how you could set your team meetings up, where you could put your creativity for your content, really helps give you a much better flow and a better structure. I have women often come to me and they're like, let's say they're starting to launch something new and they can't get it off the ground, and they're like, this happens every time, like I get this great idea and then I go to like create the content for it, and I don't know, like it just doesn't land. Or oh, I really wanted to start this new diet or this new exercise regime, but every single time I do, oh my gosh, I never stick to it. And I always say to these women, where are you in your cycle where you're starting these things? Because you probably are trying to start something where it's not going to be the most effective for you. And learning these different stages of your cycle and understanding how you react at different seasons throughout that cycle is going to be so beneficial for you for the long run. And this is how women get to sync their business with their flow. I have a very rough idea on when my bleed is going to be. And so I make sure that my calendar does not have much on, because I like to just be and just, be in that space of just rest and nurture and cuddle up on the couch with a book and, have my 20th cuppa for the day, especially that first day of my bleed. Like nothing is on my calendar for that first day of my bleed. And it's because I know that that's what I need. And it sets me up for success throughout the rest of the week. I know when I need to do podcast recording. I know when I need to do bulk email. If I'm going to create a whole heap of content, I know where in my cycle I should be planning for that to be. And so I really want to encourage you to deepen your knowledge, because this is the shit that should be taught in schools. Honestly, this is like, the school curriculum does not set anybody up for success, man or woman. And if you have a daughter and you're listening to this episode, please set her up for success as well, so that she is learning to listen to her body rather than pushing through and operating in this masculine world that is not made for her. Like, this is why women are struggling to have babies, because they've been going against their cycles for so long, right? So I wanted to share with you just a couple of things, like, because inside Evolve, I have a whole section around like the sacred bleed and, the ovulation and the follicle phase and the premenstrual, all of those. And I break it down and I talk about different crystals that you can use and work with. I talk about different essential oils that you can work with. I talk about mantras that can actually help support you as well. And I break it down and explain to you like when this fourth phase is, third phase is, second phase is. And I give you an example. So I want to share with you today, for those of you that maybe when you get to your bleed, like what that looks like, right? So I want to share this information with you. So this information is obviously found inside Evolve. If you're interested in coming into Evolve, you'll see the show notes below. So have a read over the link below. And if you've got questions, you can come and ask me. But for example, for the sacred bleed, so the types of crystals that you could be working with when you are on your bleed would be amethyst is a great one, because it aids spiritual connection, right? You're in such a portal phase, right? So connecting with amethyst is a really beautiful crystal. Ruby is another great crystal, because it cleanses negative emotions that might be stored in your blood, right? You're literally releasing, you're letting go, you're cleansing so much of yourself, yeah? The essential oils, so sage is really great. It soothes muscle cramps, and vanilla is really good because it is calms in the darkness, right? So helps your body feel more at ease and calmful. The mantra for this section is let it flow. I mean, it doesn't get more fitting than that, does it? So this is actually the fourth phase of your cycle. So it begins day 1 to 7, depending on your length of cycle. And this is why when you start to track it, you can get really clear. Like, I know my bleed is literally 4 days. Like, that's it, 4 days, and we're pretty much done. So you're going to be feeling tired and achy on this season. your estrogen levels will also start to rise, but around that day 3. And this is where you'll start to experience that boost of energy. You'll start to feel your mood shift. You'll have optimism again, and you'll actually start to feel your brain start to switch back on, right? So this gives us this opportunity to shed the parts of ourselves in those first, couple of days, really allowing us to let go of what is not serving us, allowing us to clear our space in order for something new to come through. So your superpowers during this phase is you get really clear on what your purpose is, why you're here, and what matters, right? You can connect to source directly through this season. You also will notice that your dreams are going to be way more vivid if you're open to it, right? You're going to have messages that are going to come through. You're going to have insight and wisdom that's also going to be really, really clear. And it's also going to help you identify and release what's no longer serving you if you create the time and the space to know what those things are. Yeah. And the things that maybe made you angry in other phases, they'll no longer hold power in this phase that you're in your bleed phase, right? And this is also going to be a phase where you're less likely to feel attached to anything or anyone because you're so in your own space. Yeah. So if you really honor this part of your cycle, then you're not going to worry about what you should be doing, where you should be going, who you should be spending time with. You're just going to allow yourself to just be, right? Which is how you should be. And if you wait until you're bleed to make the big decisions, you're going to be able to see the signs and the messages in regards to what to do. So if you, I don't want this to be like, nope, I can't make a decision until I'm on my bleed. Like tune into your own intuition as well. But this is just some insight around just things that I'm working with, personal experience. So how will you feel in this phase? Well, this is a phase where you might feel shame or embarrassment. You might want to eat all the food that you actually class as bad food, right? The sugar, the carbohydrates, whatever it is. You might feel tired. You might feel like you just want to be alone and you don't want to be with anybody. Your body's obviously going to feel really tender through this season, probably swollen and maybe also experiencing pain. I know for my first day, at least, I have quite a fair bit of pain on the first day of my bleed. I actually feel like the older that I get, the more pain I'm experiencing. However, I'm also curious because I used to do yoni steam cleansing at least once a month. And since I've moved to Greece, I've noticed that my cycle on my bleed is more painful. And I'm curious to know if that's because I've stopped doing the yoni steaming or not. So that's something that I have observed for myself. Your libido is turned on from day 1. So it's actually going to be easier for you to reach the big O in this season because you release a hormone that is naturally a pain reliever and it creates those good feel vibes as well. So obviously this is also a sacred time as well. So you choose, is this a time you want to connect with your partner? Is this a time that you want to just have for yourself? For me personally, like I am been celibate now for like 18 months. And I know like my portal is such a sacred space that it's going to take someone very, very special to be let back into that space, especially after, cleansing and working on my celibacy for the last 18 months. It's not something that I take lightly of letting anybody energetically and physically come into that space. Through this season, it's also important that you remember sleep is important. And it's really just a time for you to observe how you're feeling and what's coming up for you. So then how does it show up in business? So when you are bleeding, these are the things that I would encourage you to kind of focus on. So this is not a phase that you want to be focused on much of the details of the work or doing any big jobs, right? You will receive different downloads and ideas, and you might get heads up on areas where maybe attention needs to be focused on. But we should really wait until that like day 7 or day 8 to really begin that process of taking action. if there's any operations or systems that you don't like, this is the phase that will give you the time to actually reflect on those things and be like, is this working? Is this not working? I think we need to readjust these things. And it's also a really crucial phase for you to have very clear boundaries. So being super clear about what is and isn't possible for you to do during this phase, because it really is a time for doing nothing and just resting. And so if you don't let your staff know or you don't let your family know, then you're going to get resentful at them, but they can't read your mind. So you have to communicate that with them. You know, they often say, oh, I wish women come with a manual. We do come with a manual. It's our cycle. But we as women, it's our responsibility to learn it first, to then teach it to the children and the men in our life. Because like I said, this is not taught in the school system. So it's up to us, the feminine lead, to gather the information and then go forward from there. So how do you get the most out of this season? So this is where you're going to probably have to say no more often. So practicing to say no, not rushing to emails or texts, and avoiding your to-do lists that are a mile long, and just being okay with setting those boundaries. Yeah. Being nice to yourself. Yeah. Holding that compassion. The amount of women that like beat themselves up when they're on their cycle, when they come to me, you know, they're beating themselves up about different things that have happened in their relationship or in their families or with their staff or with their work. And I'm like, where are you in your cycle? And they're like, oh yeah, I just started my period today. And I'm like, all right, well, go easy on yourself. Like, just chill. It's okay that you're feeling really emotional and that you've reacted this way, right? And also allow this time to be really selfish in this season. So allow yourself to make it sacred, make it restful, you know, make it about sleep, make it about whatever it is that you need in this space. So from a ritual point of view, what I would encourage you to do is to create sacred spaces, use your personal items that you've got that have meaning specifically to you, and put those things like candles or quotes or read a book or snuggle up under a rug, or maybe it is just the couple of days you just binge Netflix and you just own that. Yeah, maybe it's a self-discovery time where you grab your journal out or you take a bath with some oils and you put some beautiful rose petals in. Yeah, just remember that it's a really important phase where little movement needs to be taken care of through that phase. So that's just a little snippet of like the 4 phases, but I wanted to share that with you. So hopefully when you're on your bleed, you can actually really support yourself and you can understand a little bit more about what's happening for you and why you might not feel like you've got the clarity, or why you feel like you're just exhausted, or why you can't follow through on tasks. And learning this was an absolute game changer for me in how I show up for myself, then also being able to communicate that. So once I learned this, when I was in a long-term relationship, I could communicate that with Troy, and I could be like, you know, this is where we're at. You know, there were seasons in my cycle where I was not interested in having sex. Like I was exhausted, right? And you know, he would want to, and I would knock him back, and that obviously brought up his rejection. It obviously made me feel guilty, and it impacted our relationship. But once I learned this about myself, I could actually show him where I was in my cycle, and I started to become really in tune with myself. And like, you know, the week of ovulation, it was like, we can do it every night, right? I don't care, several times a day. Like I felt like I had that urge. Whereas come my bleed, like I wasn't really interested. And so it helped him also understand me. And so I think it's really important if you are in a relationship, and you know, sex intimacy it's a big part of a relationship. And so you learning and understanding about yourself as a woman is really crucial and really helpful for the men or other people in your life as well, to know how they can show up for you. Yeah. And so as I started sharing this information with him, he stopped, you know, picking the times to want to hit me up when I was not feeling it, right? And that also eased his wounds, because he wasn't feeling rejected when I was knocking him back, or when I was saying no, like I'm not interested tonight. So honestly, like from relationships, from friendships, from business, like so many areas of your life are going to majorly improve when you start learning and understanding about your cycle and how you can sync it with every other area of your life. So if this has been helpful or supportive, then please let me know. If you would love to deepen your knowledge in this area, then you'll see in the show notes the application for Evolve. Fill it out. Let me see what you've got. And I would love to welcome you into this space, because honestly, it is a game changer once you start learning how to put your needs first and what is going on in your body as well. So I hope today has been supportive. I love you dearly, and I will chat with you real soon. Bye for now.